Welcome into Two for Talking. I'm your host and producer, Corey Tusick. I got the great Joe Bartnick and Josh Yohe here. And guys, we have some conference final stuff to talk about. So we're going to get into that. And then second segment, we'll talk a little Penguins. There was no Penguin news, but we'll get into favorite Penguins conference finals moments and other stuff. But first off, because it's fresh on our minds, guys, it just ended last night. It happened. Connor McDavid won the conference championship. He is in the Stanley Cup Final. What are your thoughts?
Joe, I think that was one of the stranger hockey games I've watched because Edmonton was outshot, was it 35-10, I think, something like that. But I didn't feel like they were being dominated. I never felt like they were going to lose that game. But you look at the shot total, and I think anybody who didn't see the game would see that and say, oh, man, Edmonton really got lucky. They stole one. I didn't really feel that way. I didn't think Dallas had that many grade A opportunities. And I think it's a little scary for the rest of the league if the Oilers have actually figured out how to win 2-1 games.
That's a fabulous point. It's almost like they stole that whole series. Like, you don't know how they won that series, but they did. Do you feel that way, Josh? In a way.
I think Dallas is the more complete, better team. But I didn't feel like Edmonton was undeserving either. That they're just so different than any other team that they're going to score on 50% of their power plays. That's like, it's not a fluke at this point. That's just who they are, and they're the two best players in the league. I mean, so that makes them just unique. Even though I still look on paper and think, Dallas was clearly better.
That's such a great point, though. I don't feel like they were undeserved. It just feels like, how did Dallas lose that series?
Right.
You know, when you look at it, when you watch the games, it's one of those things where I thought Dallas was the perfect example of they had some black bananas, they had some green bananas, they had the perfect amount of bananas, but in the end, it was kind of like the old guys just couldn't pull them through, and the young guys couldn't get there either. And then they went up against Jesus and Leon, and Hyman had a great series, and Skinner played well. And the beauty of the NHL, as you know, is you're only as strong as your weakest link.
Yeah.
And I mean, Suter played some terrible hockey.
He got benched last night for about last two periods, didn't he? Almost.
Yeah, I believe so. You know, I was watching with the sound down is my preferred way to watch hockey usually. So sometimes you miss little things, like I didn't see it, but Haskinen deserved 80 minutes of ice time anyway.
No, he did. No, I thought, Joe, by the end of that series, I thought Edmonton made Dallas look a little slow. Right?
Exactly.
And I don't think Dallas is a slow team at all. But games 5 and 6, I was like, man, Edmonton is just skating them right into the ground. And it wasn't just McDavid and Dry. Yeah, I mean, we know he can fly around anyone, but it was just the whole team. And I just thought they were wearing Dallas out a little bit. And that surprised me. I wasn't expecting that.
As much as I'm a big Rupe Hintz fan, it seemed like after his initial pop, he kind of leveled out, and maybe he was not up to speed or he wasn't in the flow. As much as Henrique really came in and gave them that leveled out the Oilers, you know, it let them split up Jesus and Leon a little bit more, and kind of, you know, they had more depth. Their depth showed a little bit more when Henrique was in there, and Broberg made a nice, you know, Broberg stepped in there nicely too. You know, I mean, let's face it, Oilers coach, that guy did a good job, man.
No, he really did. They've got the best record in hockey, since Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever. I mean, they do. We can't deny what they've done since he's been in charge. I give him a lot of credit, in fact. I tell you what, Joe, when McDavid scored that ridiculous goal in the first period, I said to myself, I don't think they're losing tonight. That was just such of an incredible moment. I give him a lot of credit. I know people are going to dump on him until he wins it all, because that's the way Mario had to deal with that. Sid didn't have to deal with that because he was like 20 when the Penguins won it all. But that's just the way it is, right? Ovechkin always had to deal with it. But I give McDavid a lot of credit. He was by far the best player on the ice last night in the biggest game that he's ever played. To score a goal like that in that moment, I think that tells you a little bit, not just about his talent, but maybe about his character and just how badly he wants to win. So I think, you know, this is a great thing for the league and for those of us who just like entertaining hockey, to have the Oilers in the final, whether you like them or you don't like them. If you like hockey at all, you have to like watching them play. They are never, ever boring.
I just love when great players, great human beings step up in the moment. And he stepped up in the moment. Just that goal was just magnificent. And that's what guys like him are supposed to do.
Yes.
And he did it. So I was so happy for him. I really, what a great moment for the NHL, for Edmonton, for everybody. It was just great stuff. I mean, in my heart of hearts, not only did I want to have it go to 7 games just to have more hockey, but it was great. The way it played out was just fantastic.
It's a good thing for the league. And no, I give that Edmonton fan base, man. You could just feel it watching on TV, the intensity in that crowd. That they certainly love their Oilers there. And it just, thinking about McDavid, like he is right in his peak. He's 27 years old. This is supposed to be happening. Like when somebody's this good and he hasn't won it all and he's 27, right at the height of his physical powers. That's what it looked like last night. That's what it's supposed to look like. We saw it with Mario, Gretzky, and Sid when they were at the very height of their powers, just how they can, in the biggest games, there's only so much you can do. That goal he scored, Dallas did absolutely nothing wrong. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't stop it because he was that physically superior. So I think it's a good thing for the league. We always talk about the NHL stinks at promoting its stars, and it does. But to have him now on the Stanley Cup final stage, and for people who haven't, for casual hockey people who don't know anything about Connor McDavid, just how entertaining he is to watch. I mean, they're going to make a few fans around the country just having this guy on national TV every night.
The best player is playing for the Stanley Cup. It doesn't get better than that.
And it doesn't always happen that way.
It usually doesn't happen that way.
Right.
I mean, Sid played for it 3 times. 4 times, excuse me. 4.
Mario twice.
It's what I love about McDavid right now too is though he's playing physical. He's in the mix. He's between the circles. And that really that's what hockey is about. He's fighting for ice. He's playing defense. He's doing everything. He made that Yzerman turn this year.
He had a couple of back checks last night. I was like, wow, look at this. Like, not that he's ever been a bad defensive player, but you don't always see him assert himself in that zone, maybe the way Sid does, the way other great players sometimes do. But you certainly saw it from him in this series, didn't you?
Oh, absolutely. I've seen it from him more lately than ever. I mean, starting even in the regular season. I don't know if he wanted to make his ex-agent, now coach, look good, but he's had some vinegar in his game, and just that whole team they're on a mission. I hate to whatever sound cliched, but they're on a mission. 2 teams right now that are on a mission. They both teams, East and West, they earned it. They totally earned it. I'm a little shocked in Pavelski until the last 2 games really disappeared. Like he wasn't regular Pavelski.
Starting to show his age a little bit, perhaps. As impressive as Dallas was in the first 2 rounds, they just, I don't know, they never looked themselves in this series. And maybe it was simply that Edmonton had a gear that they couldn't match. I think that's probably part of what we saw. And I also think with Edmonton, I know they go back and forth on this, Joe. I think, and we've seen it, when Sid and Gino were young, we saw it when they would play together every now and then on the same line. McDavid and Draisaitl are incredible when they play together, but the Oilers are a much better team when they're on different lines. I don't think there's any questioning that. But when you have 2 players that great that you could have, on the ice, 2/3 of the time or whatever it is, I just think they're so much more effective, even though we don't think of them as a great 5-on-5 team. Just in terms of having to defend them, man, they are just a bear when those 2 are on different lines.
That, not to sound like a broken record, and that's why when they got Henrique, I was like, this lets them split those guys up more because they're much more effective as a 2-line team, as a 3-line team. But they play better together, though, than Sid and Gino ever did.
Oh, by far.
And that's how you can always tell a national announcer who hasn't done his homework or paid attention. They go, oh, they're going to load up Sid and Gino. Everyone knows it doesn't work.
I get so aggravated when and it's people I like on social media, like people who know the game. Well, why don't they play more together? Like, have you ever watched them play together? They're terrible. I mean, they weren't bad when they were younger. They would have some moments, 15
Right.
years ago.
Right.
Lately, when Sullivan doesn't do it for a reason because he knows it's not going to work.
Right.
Whereas Draisaitl and McDavid, when they're together, it's a very simple concept. It's kind of like when Mario and Gretzky played in the Canada Cup, and Gretzky told Mario, like, when we have an odd man rush, I'm passing you the puck, you're shooting. Like, McDavid's the playmaker, Leon's the finisher when those two play together. They know the roles and it works. I think Sid and Gino, they try to do too much and try to be a hybrid a little bit in that role, and it just never works. No, you're right. Draisaitl and McDavid are great together, but I'd still rather, if you're Florida, for instance, and we're going to get to them in a second, you would just play Barkov against that line, and it's going to shut them down to some extent. And then who else is going to score for Edmonton? Having that lineup, spread out a little bit, just really makes a huge difference. And you've just seen the Oilers, I think, evolve as a team. They've been in the playoffs enough. They know what it takes. Their lineup's a little deeper now. They're a much better defensive team than they were. I don't think they're great, but they're much better.
Right.
You've just seen them evolve.
I think too. Oh, sorry, Joe. I was just gonna follow up on the point of how you guys said they're learning to win 2-1 games. Last night with the block shots and everything in the last 10 minutes, it was frantic, and that's scary to see that team figure that out.
Well, yeah, there's nothing like desperation. That's what makes playoff hockey so much fun. But they are a little deeper at defense. I definitely think they're deeper at forward than they have been for a long time. And how about just the cojones to bring in Corey Perry? A, benching Corey Perry. B, bring him in, playing him on the second line. That was genius. Really. Because most people are like, oh, come in, play 9 minutes on the third line, fourth line. And he really contributed to that second line.
He can still play.
Yeah. And not to revision history, but what a terrible job of asset management Chicago did. Whatever he did, he didn't kill anybody. So I'm like, what are they doing? Just say, hey, he has the flu and trade him. You know what I mean? They gave him for nothing, right? I know.
He's never been a particularly beloved teammate, but still, you're right. They did not handle that as well as they could have, or they could have been at least a little more transparent about what was happening. That whole thing was butchered. The Blackhawks have certainly seen better days, but I know people in the Penguins organization at that time who told me, "Man, I'd love to get my hands on Corey Perry. This team could use somebody like him." And obviously, I don't think Kyle Dubas was all that interested. But no, the guy can still play whether you like him or not. He's just a nasty playoff performer who's going to score you a couple of big goals here and there. So, Edmonton's just so much more balanced, and guys like him, that's one of the reasons why.
Well, isn't Dubas notorious? He wanted to go play for Toronto 5 years ago. Dubas said no. So he went to. That's how he's been. If he went to Montreal, if he went to Toronto, he wouldn't have the streak of 5 straight conference finals at least.
That's true.
Because he had to go to Montreal.
General managers do get funny though when they like a guy or they don't like a guy. Like Jim Rutherford, when he wanted a guy, he would find a way to get him. He tried to get Jason Zucker for about 4 years. He finally made it happen. Guys like that, Kyle Dubas wanted Erik Karlsson in Toronto. He finally got him in Pittsburgh. Sometimes when you say your heart on a player like that, some guys just find a way to get it done.
It's a dating pool.
I remember though when Perry was kind of available, I'm like, I'll take him. Whatever he did, I'll take him. He's kind of exactly what we needed: a net front presence and a veteran guy.
Oh, no question.
And there's all the rumors going around, and I was like, you know what? Sid's mom's old enough. It's not gonna be a problem. It's just but all the rumors aside, I would have loved to see him come here. But and it was a cool little story they threw out there for Corey Perry with his son, who because Corey Perry won a cup, but he's been to so many and lost so many, and he's got a young son that understands what the Stanley Cup is now, and has seen his dad lose it a bunch of times in a row. So always on the wrong side of it. And I thought too, I just wanted to throw out there, did you guys get that sense in the crowd with Edmonton? It just immediately reminded me of 2008, whenever the Penguins went to the conference final and then ultimately against the Red Wings in the Stanley Cup final. That moment of the realization of the plans coming to fruition. When Sid got drafted, when we won the lottery, we all thought Stanley Cup. And some of us were dumb enough to think that was going to happen with John LeClair in the first year. But it was like that kind of moment of like hearing the whole crowd realize like this is actually happening. And I thought that was a pretty cool moment for the fans. And it's going to be really exciting to see them in game 3 as they take on the Florida Panthers, which if we jump over to the other series, Florida closes out the Rangers 4-2. Some of the Rangers kind of went a little quietly into the night, and Jacob Trouba, good Lord, was his defensive mishaps on display. If you don't know what play I'm talking about, where he, I think it was the first goal, just kind of took himself out of the play and allowed a odd man rush
times.
Yeah. So what did you guys think of that series and how it wrapped up, and where do you think, first off, where do the Rangers go from here? Another disappointment in the conference final. And then
I have so many thoughts on that series. I really do. We can do an hour. First of all, I don't know how you feel about this, Josh. I think it shows how bad the Metro Division really was.
You might be onto something there. Because, Joe, how did this series even go 6 games? Like, Florida just dominated the whole series. I mean, they really did.
Right. And that being said, all the ESPN cronies and everyone from New York who wants to glorify Igor Shesterkin, he was brilliant. If he was brilliant, it'd be a game 7. I'm sorry. Brilliant is Watt 86. Watt 93. You're not brilliant when you lose. You're brilliant when you win. Enough of Shesterkin. And then Igor, he forearm shivers Erod. Oh, let's pick the smallest guy in the NHL to deliver a message to. Go home, Igor. Go play in the World Championships. I'm tired of you.
I thought Florida was so impressive. They never panicked when the series was tight. I just think they knew they were better, and they played with a certain confidence. They just wear you down. Like they just do. By the end of series, you don't want to deal with them anymore. That's why we're going to get to our thoughts on predictions on the final later. But I'm going to say right now, Edmonton better get off to a good start in that series, because the longer it goes on, the longer Florida can just beat you up and wear you down. It's just harder and harder to beat them. Their 5-on-5 play was so dominant against the Rangers. There was never a question who was going to win that series, even though they were down at one point. You just knew that the Rangers weren't going to beat them 4 times, and that Rangers power play, which was so great, finally started to get shut down by the Florida PK. And that Florida penalty killing unit is so good. I said this about Dallas a week or two ago, and I'll say it about Florida too. They don't really have any weaknesses. They are just so deep. They can beat you in so many different ways. And I'll go back like I do every week to what the real difference is for them. You got to deal with Sasha Barkov, okay? He is the best defensive forward in the league right now. We all know who he's going to be playing against. I don't know that he'll shut McDavid down completely. I don't think anybody can do that. But McDavid's not going to put up 3 or 4 points a game and just roll through them. Barkov is so great defensively. He's just such of an X factor for them in any series. I think they're built to play against a team like Edmonton just because of those. And Sam Bennett, too, another really good defensive center. That makes them so hard to deal with.
They are just, I mean, they healthy scratch Ryan Lumberg. He'd be the best third liner on the Penguins.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I just look at their defense, and I always like Mikkola, because he's just a big lug. He's playing some great hockey. Yeah. Will the real Oliver Ekman-Larsson please stand up? I mean, where has that guy been for 15 years? I mean, I was dumb enough to think that they couldn't replace the guys that they left last year. I thought Florida's going to have a down year. They only got better. And you got, their top 3 lines are just incredible hockey players, and they play with bad intentions, and they can all score, and they're confident. You see Kachuk after the game, he's like, yeah, we knew it was just a level of confidence that they're playing with that's unsurpassed. And they haven't, all their guys can score, not just, they're biding time, they're killing 45 seconds, they're going to forecheck a little bit. Every one of their forwards can bury the puck. I mean, they like esoteric like that. Like, there's just guys you like. Who's this? I mean, we know who they are, but it's like They're all skilled.
Yeah, and we've mentioned all these great Florida players. We haven't even mentioned Verhaeghe or Reinhardt. I mean,
right?
They are so deep.
Lundell.
They're star.
Lundell.
Oh yeah, their star power everywhere on this team, and they've been there before. I think their playoff experience really showed they don't get rattled. But one thing you mentioned, Joe, they play with bad intentions, and they do. When I look at the postseason so far, who's the one team that really gave Edmonton the most fits? That was Vancouver. And I thought the Canucks played a really nasty style against them. I was surprised that Dallas wasn't more physical. I kind of thought they let them off the hook in that regard. Whereas like JT Miller was like slashing McDavid in the nuts every chance he got. Like that's how they play. And Florida's like times 10 in that regard. And when I think of the Oilers, right? We know the Oilers really well, Joe. You know why? Because we grew up in Pittsburgh. And the Penguins over the years and the Oilers, let's be honest, there's a lot of similarities. The Oilers played the way the great Penguins teams played. What don't they like? They didn't like teams beating them up. They didn't like teams that could play a tight defensive game. Florida can do all those things. So Florida is they're kind of bred to irritate the Oilers a little bit. You have to be physical with that team. If you're just going to turn it into a up and down skating, you have no chance. So I think Florida just plays with that nasty edge, and that helps you win playoff series. There's no question.
Exactly, and you can't fake it. When you fake being physical, that's the worst. When you try to match Florida, they play that way for 82 games plus the playoffs. That's their playground. When you try to step up and be physical, then you're taking yourself out of your game, which is the worst thing that can happen to Edmonton. I think splitting up McDavid and Ligon is their best chance because, let's face it, Florida, they took out Kucherov, basically. They took out Pasta. They took out the bread man. I know Jesus is Jesus, but they're going to, he's still going to get his points. They're not shutting him down. But, they're going to have to find some secondary scoring, I believe. But to get back to the East, though, really, if you take out Lafreniere and Vinny Trocheck, they didn't do anything.
No.
They shut down the Rangers. It made me think maybe the Rangers stink. Maybe Carolina's stunk. It made me rethink everything about the Metro. You remember Randy Slack? He's a big time radio guy. Remember he was on DVE.
Sure.
He has a show in Carolina. So I did his show. He's like, "What do you think about Carolina?" And I go, "Well, maybe your number one defenseman shouldn't win the Lady Byng."
That's never a good sign. You never want to win the Lady Byng.
Rodney Francis can, but you don't want your number one defenseman to be a Girl Scout. You want him to hit somebody. It's like,
no,
but
it's true. It's true. And you look at that series, and you're right. The bread man was invisible. Kreider was invisible.
Other than Kachuk, Evan was Kachuk. That was it. But you know what? Kachuk will do. Like I said, that's his playground. He'll do that all day long. Kreider.
They shut him down. And I also think part of it's just Barkov. You put him out there against those great players, they're not going to have the puck very often because of him. And he's just so hard to create any offense against when he's on the ice. And I love their blue line. It's just so deep. There's not really any weaknesses or weak links that you can attack on their blue line. They're all big and they skate well. So I thought Florida, and I think we kind of knew on paper they were the best team in the East going into the playoffs. I think we all kind of felt that way. And you're right, the Metro, I don't think was very good. The Rangers, they won the President's Trophy, but did anybody really think they were the best team in the East? I don't think so. So Florida was the best team in a bad conference, and I don't know how that. Well, Edmonton comes from a conference that was clearly better this season. I don't know if that gives them any kind of an edge or not, but Florida made it look pretty easy, even though the series went 6.
Just Montour. I remember when he was a Ducky. He's become a great defenseman. Ekblad, and how about Gustav Forsling?
Oh,
he looks like Ray Bork.
He might be. Is he a Conn Smythe favorite if they win the whole thing? Honestly,
and you know what? And now we've gone like 35 minutes. Bobrovsky, he's going to the Hall of Fame if he wins this cup.
Oh yeah, no question. He's got numerous Vezinas. He's done it all now.
He played as good as Shesterkin. I'm sorry, Linda Cohn, but he did.
Did you see the look on all the ESPN? The ESPN people were so upset when the Rangers lost that they couldn't control or contain their sadness on the air. I felt like I was watching a funeral. Like Messi, I understand at least, but like you could tell the whole crew was like visibly upset about what happened.
Well, I was listening. I was watching the games and listening to the Florida Panther radio side.
Okay.
Because I couldn't I
really like those guys, by the way.
The Florida Panther radio.
Yeah, Florida radios. Yeah, they're great.
I mean, the best Florida radio though is Tampa Bay radio because that's Phil Esposito.
Baby.
That's Phil Esposito. And Espo calls the game like my dad. Oh, jeez. What's he doing?
He just swears on the air all game. He never stops. Yeah.
But he's like, wait, oh, come on now. Jesus Christ.
That's right. Oh, yeah.
But I do like I can't take the ESPN. We talked about that to death.
It's too much to take. But listen, there's no question the best team in the East has advanced.
Right.
And I think we have ourselves a really good matchup. I think it's a fun series.
No, I know I'm a little hard on Mr. Fox, but he has to be playing with a broken spine. I mean, or someone take away his Norris Trophy. Because what was that?
I know. Listen, he's a good player. He's wonderful on the power play. But, man, guys like Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes, they're way up here.
Miro Heiskanen.
Yes, Fox isn't in their class. I'm sorry.
No.
He's a really good player, but he's not one of them.
I mean, Cale Makar, he's probably my favorite player to watch it is in the Penguin. I love watching Cale Makar. He's the only man I've ever seen catch up to Jesus. Jesus turned the corner and Mikhail caught him. I'm like, whoa, yeah. Well, I think Colorado. It still blows my mind that Colorado's not in the series, but that's what's so great about Jesus and Leon, and that's why it's going to be an interesting series. Maybe they will step up because my whole thing with the Rangers was, I think the Florida's a better team, but who knows what Breadman Zibanejad, is he on a milk carton? What did Zibanejad do with a couple turnovers?
Forgot he was playing.
He's a weird player. He'll kill you someday. He's so streaky. When he gets hot, he's scary. But, man, he disappears at times, too. He really does.
Completely disappear. I mean, now this might be summer programming, Josh, but, I mean, is he on the block? He's got to be on the block, right? Because you're going to move Lafreniere up. I mean, you can't roll that team back, right?
Maybe. They're not as young as – they're getting old, too.
That's what I'm saying. Zibanejad, I mean –
they have a lot of 30-plus guys on that team. And you're right. Lafreniere and Trocheck were great, but other than those two, man, a lot of no-shows from the forwards, to say the least. Do we have a prediction, Joe? Are we going to give our prediction now for the final, or are we saving it for the end?
I don't know. That's
we should ask our producer.
Yeah, I would say I was going to bring that in because my thought, I wanted to size these two up. I think it's really interesting. Rob Rossi had an interesting tweet that was kind of along the lines of what I was thinking, where Florida should win this cup.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of like in 2009, the Red Wings honestly were a better team than the Penguins. But can Sid and Gino and can McDavid and Draisaitl just push them over the top and get this series done? And part of me sees that happening, especially with like I was saying, the blocked shots at the end of the game. I mean, there was a wide open net that Dallas had with about 5 minutes left that, just like four people diving in front of the puck. So they're figuring it out. And is it something that, with the McDavid and Draisaitl can get them over the top? But then it's an interesting parallel because then on the other side, you have Florida who did what the Penguins did in 2008 and lost and now have come back with a vengeance. So I thought it was to give it a little bit of a Penguins flavor. There's these two, through lines of similarities to the Penguins in 2009. Which one's going to prevail? I'm not going to make a prediction because I'll be wrong either way. So I'll leave that up to you guys.
I am going to pick Florida in 7. I don't know that I do so confidently, but I think that they were there last year helps them, and I think they're healthy. And I just really think I respect what Skinner did the last couple of games. I think Florida's got a way better goaltender. And so I lean toward them, but I think it's a fascinating series.
I couldn't have said it any better. It's I think Florida's a definitively better team. They've been there. This is their second go around. They know this is like now or never. They have a much better goaltender. It's just a piece of you, Josh, and like you're betting against Jesus. You know what I mean?
I hate doing it.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm gonna go. Big Cats in 7 as well. I think it's Florida's time, and I don't trust Skinner as much as I trust Bobo. I think Bobo. We will. It's going to be a fascinating series because I'll tell you, if Edmonton steals one in these first two, which they easily can, because Florida's not going to get rattled. They'll give up one, whatever. We'll come back, but it's going to be tough to go up to Edmonton. It's going to be a zoo up there.
Oh, no question about that. So it's a great series. It might not be good for TV ratings in the States, but I don't care. I think in terms of entertainment, it should be really good hockey. I mean, we've had some duds in the finals over the years. I don't think this will be one. I think this is a legitimately great team against two transcendent players. You don't always get matchups like this. And it could be, maybe it's just Jesus's time. It could be. And great players like that, when they get a sniff of it, when they get close, you know how it is. That can be a scary thing. But I just still think top to bottom, Florida's better. And I think in hockey, the better team usually wins over the better player. That's just the way it usually goes.
Yes, and it's funny you say that though, because like so many people right now are like, oh, the ratings are going to be terrible. Like, are you an ESPN exec? Do you have ESPN stock? Like, what do you care?
That's right.
Not you, but I mean, it's like people just hand-wringing. Oh my God, what are the ratings going to be? I don't give a damn. People can go watch women's basketball. I don't care. I'm watching the NHL. I don't care what the ratings are.
And as far as I'm concerned, they've never cared, the NHL, because they obviously don't promote their stars. They don't really care if it's popular. Like,
but it's like, how does that affect what does the common man care what the ratings are?
I've never understood that much why the ratings are all that different. Like, all hockey people I know are watching the finals regardless of who's in it. Like, I've never understood why it's that big of a fluctuation, or maybe it won't be. Who knows? But no, I think the hockey fan in me is really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a special series.
I think it's to be fantastic. The only thing I don't agree with is waiting a week to start playing. I think that's where the momentum gets lost.
And I don't want to be watching hockey on June 20th. I really don't. It's just there's no. They're going to be playing hockey for a week after the NBA is done. The NBA starts a month later. When the NBA starts at the end of October. It's just incredible how long and I love hockey. The season's just too long. It's almost unbearable when it gets this long.
Yeah, I mean, it literally is like I saw it go into like the 20s, like the draft is like a week later. Like what?
Oh yeah,
it's but just to be the ratings are gonna be like, who cares? I want to see the two best, and we're getting Jesus and we're getting Florida. They're in Florida, so people who are like, oh my God, there's no fans. Yeah, there are fans there. It's gonna be a great atmosphere. It's gonna be fantastic.
Yep.
Yeah, and I love whenever people say they really want the NHL to be like, oh, it's the fourth most popular major sport. I'm like, I don't care. It's my favorite, so like that's all that matters to me. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's like McDonald's food sucks. Like, who cares what's popular? Like, popular doesn't mean it's good.
Exactly. I'm like, it's I couldn't be more excited. I pray that we get a 7-game series. And like you guys pointed out, with this week-long break, all of a sudden I have a running list like that has been building up over the playoffs of like TV shows and movies that I wanted to like watch. And now I was like, oh, look, I guess I can kind of knock some of these out. Or, every other fan out there, check in on your family. If you have a spouse or children, this is your opportunity over the next 5 days to see how they're doing.
After the 20th, I start reading books until camp.
Yeah.
I literally I read like 7 books in the summer. And then, here we go to Latrobe.
Yeah, there we go. Well, that'll do it for the first segment. Coming back on the second segment, we're going to talk about the Penguins conference finals history. What are our favorite moments? There wasn't a ton of Penguin news. So we'll get into that and more on the second segment of Two for Talking. Welcome back to Two for Talking. And the conference finals just wrapped up, as we were talking about in the first segment. And there wasn't a ton of Penguins news, so I thought this was a great time to throw out there. What are your guys' favorite conference finals memories of the Penguins. Obviously, they're probably the favorites are all going to be in ones that we've won. I don't think anybody's going to be talking about John Van Beesbrook in this segment. But I'll just throw out there for mine at first.
Noted racist, John Van Beesbrook.
Yeah, true story.
I do want to bring up one thing I totally spaced on. I want to say for everyone pining for Vinny Trocheck instead of Evgeny Malkin, Trocheck played just like Malkin in Game 6. He took a bad offensive zone penalty and didn't do anything.
It justified everything.
It's a tribute to Gino.
Yeah, I was like, there you go. There we go. Just like Gino. All right. I'm sorry.
But yeah, no, I wanted to throw out there my favorite memory. I mean, it's hard to say what the favorite is, but I guess we're just compiling a list of favorites. One of my favorites was, I believe, in the 08. I don't know if it wasn't one of the ending goals, but I mean, in 08 against the Flyers, beating the Flyers in the conference final to go to the Stanley Cup for Sid's first trip to the Stanley Cup. Being in the building for that was one of the craziest moments. I forget what goal it was, but whenever Sid deflected the shot behind his back and it went between his legs and into the net, at that moment, you just kind of knew, oh my God, we're going to win. And the feeling that the entire crowd had that the rest of that game was like, oh my God. Like, I don't know if either of you guys were at that game, but it was like we were all looking at each other like, can you believe this? This is happening. So that's one that I always remember. And I know Joe probably has a fond memory or two of that series.
Yeah. I mean, I know anytime you beat, you can't beat him enough. My favorite moment from a conference final has got to be Chris Kunitz in double overtime. Yeah. And the interesting story about all that was I had a gig in New Jersey and listen to the first two periods on my phone. Third period, get off stage. Then I had to take the train back through to get to Manhattan. I'm on the train. I'm getting bad signal, lost signals in the first overtime. I get above ground, or I'm still in the bows underneath Madison Square Garden, Penn Station, and there was a Fridays. And I run in and I start watching the second overtime. And the lady's like, we're closing. I'm like, oh, and she goes, while I clean up, you can watch the run of the game. So she was nice enough to give me a beer. I sat with two Flyer fans who were interested parties. Oh. It was like, you hear in World War I how like in between the trenches, like in Christmas Eve, they sang Christmas carols back and forth. That's what it was like with me and these Fire fans. They wanted us to lose, but they were cordial. They actually shook my hand when we won. But I'll never forget where I was at when Kunitz scored that goal. And that's my one memory.
That's the most nervous crowd I've ever witnessed at a sporting event. I still remember I just walked around the concourse in between the first and second overtime, and like I literally wanted to hand out blood pressure medication to people. Like, it wasn't an enjoyable game for the fans. I think partially because the Penguins were so much better than that team. And yet, if you know your Penguins history, that's the kind of team that ruins the party. They were just that classic underdog team that would never go away. They were playing the trap, driving the Penguins nuts. Certainly one of the most important moments in franchise history. And I will take you to another moment that I think was one of the most important in franchise history. All you old timers will remember May 11th, 1991, Mark Recchi skating down the right wing, Game 6 and for those who don't know, the Penguins were up 3-2 in the series. And in the spring of 91, the Penguins never won anything. And that was their chance to get to the final. And if they lost that game, they would have had to go back to the Boston Garden for Game 7. I think the Penguins were better, but I assure you that was not something anybody wanted to do. That was not an easy place to win. And the Penguins fell behind 2-0 to the Bruins in Game 6 at home.
Yes.
And they got back into it. Phil Bourque scored a goal to tie it at 2. And he actually told me a great story about that goal. He said, I was going to pass the puck when I saw it there. I said, yeah? He said, Mario was on the ice. I heard Mario yell, shoot. So you don't go against what the big guy says. So I went in. So they tied it. And, tied at 3 late in the third period. And if you watch the replay, all the Bruins go towards 66 when he was coming down the left wing, just left Mark Recchi wide open, and he let go of the old Mark Messier wrist shot off the wrong foot. And to me, one of the most important goals in Penguins history. And then Mario ended it by scoring the empty netter and falling to his knees, which there's no video of, which tells you about the production quality of hockey games in 1991. But those who were there will tell you he fell to his knees. And for somebody who never showed emotion in games, for him to react like that. And then, all these sissies don't pick up the conference trophies. Mario just picked it up and skated around the ice back in the day. That was one of my favorite memories. Like, oh man, they were just parading around like it was the Stanley Cup.
Oh, I remember. I can still see that vividly. That was going to be probably my favorite memory when Corey brought up the topic. Like, just your first one. You never forget your first. I just remember being down, and Stevens in his that whatever that color blue is, that Star Trek blue undershirt, going, we're going guaranteeing winning in Boston. It's like we never did anything, we never won anything before. And Stevens is like, we go up there, we're winning, and it was just like, that's why we love Artie. It's just the best. I mean, it was.
And that was at a time when athletes didn't just make predictions. I think Joe Namath was the only one who had done it before then. And the Penguins just got, they lost the first 2 games in Boston. And I love having our Hall of Fame hockey writer in Pittsburgh, my good friend Dave Molinari, has told me that story where when Stevens made the prediction, like he wanted everybody to know. So he actually was walking around to reporters telling them. Like he wasn't just like sitting in a press conference. And then he went up to Dave at the end and said, "Dave, did you hear what I said?" And Dave said, "No, what?" He said, "Hey, we're going to win. I'm here. Put it in the paper. I guarantee you." Like, he wanted everybody to know. And that's just the kind of leader he was. And then he went out, and it was one of the big reasons that it happened. But a great series in Penguins history that, of course, gave us the Ulf Samuelsson, Cam Neely knee incident, and Mike Milbury just going absolutely insane on the Boston bench.
I live with that every day.
I mean, that was
one of my best friends will never let me live that down.
I was gonna say, if he's ever a guest on the show, we'll make sure to not bring up Ulf Samuelsson.
He'll bring it up. He'll bring it up. Don't worry about
it. We've hit on a couple of very memorable conference finals, and there were others. The Penguins beating Tampa in 7 in 2016 was a great series, but I always thought for the Penguins, both in the Crosby and the Lemieux era, there were a couple of conference finals where they've never looked more dominant. And that to me would be 2009 against Carolina. Of course, the famous Gino goal. They were so good in that series, so overwhelming. Like that was just the most lopsided conference final you ever see. And also 92 when they swept the Bruins, that was the famous Mario goal in between Ray Bork's legs. If you have a chance and you've never seen highlights of the early 90s Penguins, please go to YouTube and just put games 3 and 4 in Boston in 1992. Every single goal was a work of art. Like, that team only liked to score pretty goals. They were just so dominant. So, yeah, even though we always think of the Stanley Cup Finals and the conference finals, man, there have been a lot of memories.
Artie had a hat trick in that game 3, right?
I believe he did. Yeah.
They dominated the Carolina Hurricanes in 2009. It was done.
Oh,
yeah. And I remember that whole thing. Is like, I correct me if I'm wrong now, because the first one was we beat Washington, then Philly, right, and then Carolina. Is that what
2009?
Yes,
it was Philly, then Washington, then Carolina.
Okay, because I remember thinking like, well, we got to beat Philly, no matter what. We got
that Philly team is good.
Yes, they were. And it's like, oh well, we got to beat Ovechkin, and it's like, well, we got to beat Carolina. Like, well, now we're here. We can't lose 2 finals in a row, and we may never get back.
I call that cup the Schadenfreude Cup. The enjoying other people's misery, because every single elimination game was on the road that year, and right. There's nothing more. I don't know if this makes me a sick individual, but when the Penguins score on the road, I love watching the reactions of the fans through the glass, and I can tell you there is a guy that sat behind the net the Penguins shot at twice in Philly, and the moment Sid overpowered whoever it was and stole the puck and stuffed it into that empty net in Game 6 in Philly, there was this guy that kicked the boards as hard as he could and stood up and walked out. And I I love that moment, and that's like one of my cherished Penguin memories. Is just seeing Sid like go like this right afterwards, and knowing that guy was storming out into Philly, just miserable.
Joe, being a comedian, I think should know this story. When the Penguins eliminated Philly in 2009, it was a Saturday afternoon. That evening, I saw Andrew Dice Clay perform in Greensburg, of all places. So I just had to pass that along.
Oh, hey.
Yeah. What about? I mean,
I remember I was working on a show in Vegas, and I remember like freaking out and getting. I was also on the road with Lampanelli, and I flew into town. I got the cab and got back to my room at like 12:01. Perfect. Like, and then they won. It was just like, yeah.
Which game was that? The 09?
Yeah, the game, because Game 7 of that series was a noontime game, correct?
Game 7 of the
we
Game
eliminated
6.
We eliminated Philly in an afternoon.
Yeah,
game.
That was an afternoon game. Yep,
Saturday afternoon. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was,
have been happier.
The great Talbot Shush.
That was all that game. Yeah.
And I remember when we signed Fedotenko, I was like, not many people really talked about him, and I was like, this guy's a big game player, and it was, immediately just that quiet little goal while they're announcing the last goal that Fedotenko just, tucks it in, and then we're off.
That's a great point, Corey, because you know who's kind of playing that Fedotenko role, but a little bit a bigger star. How about Vlad the Impaler coming up big? Tarasenko, he's a superstar and kind of a little under the radar.
No, you're right.
He's just hanging out in Florida. He scores the game-winning goal. It's
I
like,
know.
they're loaded. I mean, anytime. I mean, Tarasenko's not in their top. Well, he's playing like top 6 now. He got dumped down. He was a top line guy, and then he's in the top 9, let's say. But let's just say he's not one of the 5 or 6 guys we're mentioning.
Yeah, and he's still pretty darn good.
And
he fits in with them. He's a big guy. Like, they're just so big and difficult to play against. No, you're absolutely right.
He's built like a cigarette machine.
And you need guys, we're talking about all these great Penguins teams. Look at all the veterans, all the depth players that they had over the years. You mentioned Fedotenko. I mean, every cup team, you have to have guys like that. And that's something Florida certainly has. There's no question. But the Penguins in their history, even though, when we think of the Penguins, they're so synonymous with star power. When you think of the biggest games in Penguins history, it wasn't always Mario or Sid or Gino or Jágr. It often was Nick Bonino or Ruslan Fedotenko or Max Talbot. It's so cliched to say that in hockey, but it's really true. You need guys like that to score in big moments. And, man, have we seen a lot of that over the years.
Well, I thought Janmark had the Jordan Stahl goal. That shorthanded goal, that was the Stahl goal. Just turned everything around, That was a huge goal. And then Leon just Leon waking up is scary. It's going to be such a great series. Why can't they play tonight? Batman needs a week to get hotel details down. I mean, it's crazy. The Four Seasons wasn't available in Edmonton. I mean, come on.
I assure you, there's a couple of hotels you can find in Edmonton that are available.
Yes.
But that'll do it for segment number 2. Coming back, we're going to talk the final segment about traditions in sports that we wish would come back. There's one in particular that involves the Stanley Cup that I'll get into, but we'll talk about that more on 2 for Talking. Welcome back to the third segment of 2 for Talking. Traditions in sports that we wish would come back. My big one, and when I brought it up pre-show, Joe, you kind of said, you were like, that is the big one, is if you're a Penguins fan from back in the 90s, you remember when they won the Stanley Cup. My favorite, I always, in my mind, thought that the captain held the cup and both assistant captains had a hand on it, because you had Paul Coffey and Bob Airey with their hand on the cup with Lemieux as he raised it. And then, there's the beautiful Mike Lang, the Hall of Famer, just saying, go for it, Mario, go for it. And the whole team, it's like a sea of Penguins jerseys. And you just see the Stanley Cup, kind of going through it. And they're all following him and celebrating together. Like, it was just a kind of a natural passing of the cup around. And I know I've heard Staggy talk about this before, of wishing that would come back. And now I never noticed it until we lost in 08. And me being, enjoying pain, apparently, I sat there and watched the Red Wings celebrate the cup the whole time. didn't leave. And I was like, what are they doing? Like every single player gets the puck, just does like a half circle and comes back. And then ever since then, it's been my least favorite thing. It looks like such a made for TV production. It looks so lame. It's like, why can't teams just enjoy it? Now we have this stupid sparks shooting off in the background whenever they hand the cup off. I mean, it's just go back to something natural, but that's mine.
I disagree with you. I love the fact that every player and trainer and someone's dog walker gets to skid around with the puck for a second, because I really do. Like they have their moment, so their mom and dad can take their picture, and it's their moment. They earned it. They get their second with the cup. They get to skate around, and even more intriguing to me is the order of which it's handed out, and who gets it first, and who gets it second, and who gets it 9th, and who gets it 15th. I love all of that. I really do, Corey. It's like I understand what you're saying. How it was more jubilant when just Mario skated around and everyone trailed him. But
it just felt organic back then,
right? But I really do like how everyone gets their moment, and the order of who's 15th, who's 16th. Who's 7th, and I hate when it gets cut off. Like, okay, and then we're gonna go to the guy, on the ice who's interviewing somebody. Like, I want to see who's next.
That was the old NBC move when to watch the rest of the celebration with the cup. Please shift over to the NBC Sports Network now, as we're going to your local nightly news.
Turn over to OLN.
I kind of I miss the free-for-all celebration, to be honest. And I still think everybody can have their moment in that scenario. It's just not quite as staged. I still remember Mario skating with the cup in 91. He was kind of having his moment, and Ulf Samuelsson just skated behind him and ripped it away from him. It's kind of funny. I take this to other sports, too, because there's nothing more cringeworthy than when a team wins the Super Bowl, and it'd always be like a former great walking with the trophy, and they all awkwardly touch the trophy as he walks to the podium. It's really weird. I want to see a little bit more enthusiasm as well. And one that drives me nuts more than anything else, and I will again bring up the Super Bowl. This all started in 2002, I guess it was. This jerk-off New England Patriots had to be introduced as a team. And from that point on, now it's just the team goes onto the field. I don't know why, but I thought like all the introductions were so cool. Like I like seeing every player get introduced before the game. Like I still remember Super Bowl 30. Like I thought it was so cool seeing like Greg Lloyd and Kevin Green get introduced against the Cowboys. Like I always enjoyed that, and TV loves it now because it's a lot less time, so they have more time for commercials and such because you're not taking the 5 minutes to introduce the starters on offense or defense. But that's like one thing about the Super Bowl that just drives me absolutely nuts, the whole being introduced as a team. I think it's lame.
Yeah. I never even watched the pregame. So, I do like the individuals being celebrated because introduced, because I remember as a kid, whenever this is like in 78, this is how old I am. Swanee came out waving the terrible towel. Like the last offensive guy came out. And it was always you never knew. Now that someone would tweet out, like, oh, they're going to announce it. You never knew it was going to be the offense or the defense. You're just in the stands, and then it was the offense would come out, and then Swanee would do the towel. And one of my favorite memories ever, my first favorite memories in sports, is in Super Bowl 10 when they announced the defense, and you still see it in NFL films where it's the curtain. 68, 75, 63, and 78. They all come out together and they stand there like, that's the Pittsburgh effing Steelers. Like it doesn't get better than that.
I think stuff like that is cool. I even remember like in the Cordell years, the Steelers were like almost always just introduced their defense games at Three Rivers when the offense was having its struggles. And then one game, Cower was I think they got killed the week before, so Cower had the special teams introduced because he didn't think the offense or defense deserved to get introduced. I always got a kick out of that, but no, I just think it's a good way to fire up a crowd. And we all know it's not like we don't know who Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelce are. I understand that, but I don't know. I just think it's kind of a cool thing to give credit to those players who made it that far, just to give them their little 5 seconds in the sun, taking the field. I don't know. I miss that when I watch the Super Bowl telecast now. And I keep thinking back to the free for all in '91, though. I just there's Corey, I agree with you. There's something like staged and kind of lacking in enthusiasm now with the celebrations. And I do like to see like who the player will be that the captain hands the cup to. Now that's always like a piece of drama. And like Sid always throws curveballs. Like one year he gave it to Trevor Daley, and we didn't know at the time his mother was deathly ill, and Daley had the broken ankle that year, so I don't think he was playing. But Sid handed him the cup, and Daley's mom passed away like a week later. Like none of us knew at the time. Then he gave Ron Hainsey the cup in Nashville, and there was always kind of a weird relationship between those two because they had some words during the lockout in 2012. Hainsey was a big union guy, and Sid brought in Mario and Burkle for some conversations with him, and Hainsey didn't like that, so there was some friction. I'm thinking, damn, he gave Hainsey the cup. I thought he was maybe going to give it to Flower because we all knew it was his last game in Pittsburgh or with the Penguins. So yeah, there's always some drama there. I do enjoy that part of the celebration when you see who they're going to hand the cup to. I don't know who the candidates would be this year. I guess Nugent Hopkins has probably been there the longest of any of the Oilers. Maybe him. Maybe Ekblad's been in Florida forever. Maybe he'd be the guy. I don't know. There's some good choices there, I suppose.
Yeah, that is an interesting question. Who would get it in Edmonton? Wow. Maybe the Nuge. Right? I guess.
Poor guy's been there for 13
I
years.
think McDavid should just hand it to Draisaitl, then they should walk off the ice together. Like, like, we know we're the reasons this cup was won. Yeah.
Well, nothing's worse than whenever Ray Bourque got his stupid little, I get to win a Stanley Cup too tour, and Joe Sakic. I'm sorry, Joe, but what were you doing immediately handing it to Ray Bourque? And I love Gary Thorne, but after 22 years, Ray Bourque. It's like, like he didn't do it. Like it wasn't him. He should have done it in Boston if he wanted.
He had his chance in Boston for 2 decades.
Yeah,
and that's the thing is, and I'm not as anti-Boston as a lot of people, but I think I'm anti-Ray Bourque in the sense because I always just saw Mario beat him. Like if he wanted to come so bad, maybe he should have played better. Like I mean, literally, and Gretzky always owned him too.
Yeah. And it's funny if you look up, like right when I was a kid, I thought Ray Bourque was the most overrated player in the league because the Penguins just, especially Mario, just destroyed him. And you look up his numbers all the time, like, oh my God, the guy like 1,500 points or whatever it was, like just outrageous numbers. And then you appreciate what a great player he was. But I always kind of hated that he went to Colorado and won the cup that way. I'm not a real big fan of that. I know it's you're within your rights to do it, but I think when you're an all-time great player, I don't know. I just think it's kind of your duty to try to win a championship with the place that drafted you. That's why I always gave LeBron credit for going back to Cleveland. I know he left, but I don't really think he ever wanted to live in Cleveland. But I think he felt obligated. You know what? It's my hometown. They drafted me. I got to go back and win them a championship, and he did it. And then he left. But that always irked me at the time. Like, Ray Bourque's not an Avalanche. He's not an Av. Like, what are we doing here?
And my friend Matt bought his jersey on the day before he got traded. he got like the alternate Bruins jersey that had like the yellow, like it was the gold solid one.
Yeah. He didn't get much use out of that. Wow.
No, he did not. Yeah, that I don't know. I wonder if I would think. Do you think Bobo gets it second in? I mean, that's who I would think.
Maybe Cal Poso.
Yeah, the Penguin.
He's been around forever.
That is true. I mean, think about that. He's Buffalo's captain. He was a healthy scratch beginning of the playoffs. That's how deep they are.
Yeah, I'll just put a Penguins jersey on Skinner for a night, and Okposo would score against him because that guy killed the Penguins forever. That would be an interesting choice. I always think about stuff like that.
Maybe Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He's been around forever. Who knows?
He has. We haven't talked about. This is totally off topic, but it just popped into my mind. How about on his first year behind the bench, Paul Coffey going back to the Stanley Cup Final?
He just wins. He's a winner.
He does. What a decision by the Oilers to bring the doctor in. I've met him on a few occasions. He is literally one of the smartest hockey people I've ever met. I mean, he's like genius level understanding of the game. Never smiles during games. He's just all business. He's got a bunch of rings. He's been there before. This is nothing new to him, but Just wanted to give a little salute to Paul Coffey.
Really, he had a little bit of emotions in his eyes last night during the handshake.
I salute the doctor all the time because I think we talked about this on one of our shows, at one of these shows, how the trade for the doctor changed everything. He made us a legitimate franchise,
of course,
and he was nice enough to invite me and a friend of mine. I sat in the owner's box with him when they beat the Kings to go to the conference finals last year, or the round one, whatever round it was. They won, and I was rooting for the Kings, but they almost blew it. The Oilers were up, and it was an incredible game. He brought us down behind the. I was behind the bench for warmups. He goes, come on out here. I wouldn't go on behind the bench. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I kind of stayed just in the runway. But McDavid, Leon, they all came right by me. I'm like, this is crazy. And after the game, he's like, you guys want to go down in the room? And I go, I'm good. Thank God the person I was with was like, we're good. So I'm like, I don't belong there. Like this, it's not my, Josh, at least it's your job. I'm just a dude standing there like, who the hell is this guy? Like, I'm just, but yeah, the doctor, just an amazing. I just remember one time, in another event. One of his partner was not pleased he was there, and he goes, "It's for hockey." He goes, "You see everything around. Hockey gave it to me. I'm showing up."
Yeah, boy, that coaching staff has clearly done something correct in Edmonton, because
they were so bad before that. I mean,
they were in rough shape. Clearly, they wanted that guy out. Let's be honest. And we've seen it over the years with the Penguins when Dan Bilesma showed up or when Mike Sullivan showed up. It is funny how that can happen. But, I wish we didn't have to wait 4 more days for hockey, or 5 days, whatever it is. But I am certainly looking forward to it. It's going to be fun, guys.
I was going to say, you got to cut your grass, and now's the time.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think Jay Woodcroft was Scotty Bowman, but he didn't seem like it didn't seem like he was Babcock, or like they hate him, but they were terrible under him at the beginning of the year. Like, I wish I knew what really happened. He talked to Skinner. Like, I mean, what really happened? It turned everything around for that.
They lost to the Sharks. That was a game when I remember the Penguins had just put up 10 on the Sharks, and I think Vancouver had. Then they beat the Oilers. I'm like, oh my God, what is going on with them? Are they throwing games?
The best was the Sharks beat Philly. That was just the best.
Which kept them out of the playoffs in retrospect. So, yes.
Look, the San Jose, the Sharks doing the Lord's work for Joe.
Yeah, thank God. Somebody had to.
Well, that'll do it for us on 2 for Talking this week. Enjoy the Stanley Cup Finals, everybody. We'll be talking to you guys through it. Like we said, you have 4 days to sit here and get to know your family again and maybe do some yard work. And then we'll get into the hockey. But thank you guys, as always, for listening. And if you want to reach out to us, our Twitter handles, you can find us. They're all on the screen if you're watching. And then you can also reach out to the show, 2fortalkingpodcast@gmail.com. And guys, I'll finally give you a prediction. You've convinced me. I'm going to go with Florida in 7 and probably be wrong. But that's just where my money is. So I'm sticking with that. I hope you guys are right.
Money?
Yeah, oh no, I would never risk my Bitcoin on sports, especially not against Jesus. Now that I'm thinking about, maybe I should cash out my bet and hedge or something. But anyways, all right. Well, that'll do it for us on a 2 for Talking. We'll talk to you guys next week.